All right, awesome. Okay, so what we're doing is we're diving back to where we picked up, and we're on page 141. And we're in the chapter two employers. And I don't know about you guys. I'm genuinely excited to be in the chapter two employers, but that wasn't my experience when I got here. And as we go through, there's going to be a lot of like step one review, a lot of really useful 12-step directions and information. And I don't know about you guys, but I sometimes struggle with honest, loving communication. And there's a lot of that in the chapter two employers, direct, honest communication. So where we're at is page 141, and it says, perhaps you have such a man in mind. And what we're picking up is that idea of there are many men who want to stop. With them you can go far. So we're at the very bottom paragraph, the very bottom full paragraph. So perhaps I have somebody who wants to stop, somebody I think who might be open to this. I have them in mind. It says he wants to quit drinking and you want to help him. That's good. That two-way consent is a good thing to have, right? Even if it is only a matter of good business. You now know more about alcoholism. You can see that he is mentally and physically sick. And if you're writing in your book today, or if you're new to the study, when we talk about mentally sick or mentally ill, what we're referencing in this chapter, in this book, is the mental obsession. So when I'm as sober as I am today and my illness is untreated, that insane thought that tells me this time will be different, nobody will ever know, I'm out of town, so it'll be okay. You know, all those lies, that lie that I believe when I'm sober, that takes me back to the first one. And when it talks about physically sick, what we're talking about is that physical allergy. That once I start to drink or take anything mind altering, that thing that for me happens where it kicks off and I need more. And the more that I drink or the more that I use, the louder that more gets, that experience. And so that's what we're talking about, mental obsession, physical allergy. It says you are willing to overlook his past performances. Suppose an approach is made something like this. So these are precise directions, and some of it is just really good communication. So it says state that you know about his drinking and that it must stop. So that's being direct, and that's sort of what the boundary is. I know that you're drinking, and one way or another, it has to stop. Now, we're not going to control, we're not going to fix, we're not going to manage, but we're going to let them know, if you want to continue to work here, you can't be drinking, right? And in many ways, two employers is kind of the other side of two wives. So two wives is the chapter for those who they're not able to say this and have this stick. Employers, a little bit easier, little bit easier to say this and have this stick. So it says, you might say that you appreciate his abilities. You would like to keep him, but cannot if he continues to drink. A firm attitude at this point has helped many of us. So that firm, solid, I'm going to stick to this. Two wives, to the codependent, to the untreated Al-Anon, that's not possible. But on this, and what we'll see is the conditions that are required for the employer. So it says a firm attitude at this point has helped many of us. Next, he can be assured that you do not intend to lecture, moralize, or condemn. And if you guys remember on way back, I believe it's page 18. Let me see if I'm right on that. Actually, yeah, page 18, bottom paragraph of page 18. I didn't expect to bounce around here, but it's that same idea of approaching. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. It's that same idea of approaching with humility. So just kind of a bounce around to page 18, bottom paragraph, that the man who is making the approach has had the same difficulty, that he obviously knows what he is talking about, that his whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a man with the real answer, that he is not, that he has no attitude of holier than thou, nothing whatever except a sincere desire to be helpful. There are no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. And that ties in so well with, hey, we're not here to lecture, moralize, or condemn. And of course, an employer or a non-alcoholic or non-addict can't make that same approach. Hey, I've had the same thing, but we can. And so it says, going back to page 142, because I'll do that. I will bounce around right in the middle of a sentence. That's kind of what I'm like. It says that if this was done in the past, or if this was done formally, it was because of misunderstanding. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. And we're on page 142. Although I know Rob's, you're on it, you got it. It's habits to be like, oh, welcome, I'm glad you're here, which genuinely I am. And then I just feel like, welcome, I'm glad you're here. And then I let people know that, anywho, I'm glad you're all here. And Rob's got the page, it's 142. I know I'll keep coming back. All right. So it was because of misunderstanding. And as we approach the chapter 2 employers, it's important to remember that it's really easy for people who do not have this illness to misunderstand, what's going on for me, to misunderstand the nature, to think it must be weak will, to think they must be broken or wrong or just wanting to do these things. It's easy to think that. And heck, it's easy to think that when I experience that, right? To misunderstand this illness, even when I have it. So that offering that grace to people who don't have the illness that we have, and who, if possible, express a lack of hard feeling toward him. At this point, it may be well to explain alcoholism, the illness. And see, that's what we're talking about, really hammering home the physical allergy, hammering home that what happens once I start, that inability to control the amount that I take, that more that I was talking about. And then it talks about, say that you believe he is gravely ill. He is a gravely ill person. With this qualification, being fatally ill, does he want to get well? And see, that physical allergy, that once I start, I need more, and the more that I drink or the more that I use, the more that I need, that combined with a mental obsession, combined with a thought life that continues to take me back to that first one, man, I am hopeless. That's what we're talking about. If I can't drink successfully means dry pants and not burning your life to the ground. That's what it means to drink successfully. If I can't drink successfully, if I can't control it, I need to not take it. I need to not touch it. But I have a thought that happens in my mind and it's a lie, and gosh darn it, I believe the lie, and off I go. See, I need to not touch it, but I can't stop myself from touching it. And as a result of that, I'm stuck in this hopeless dilemma, and it is fatal. It's fatal whether I think so or not. It's fatal whether I believe so or not. And I think everyone in this room can probably list more than one, maybe several people that we know who have died of this illness. But there's something that happens. It's, I think I'm different. I think it's not going to happen to me, right? And there are many, many ways in which, you guys could just come out into the room, and if you're glad you're here, just teasing. And so similarly, what we were doing in the chapter more about alcoholism was really hammering home the hopelessness of this illness, really driving that home. And what it's asking for the employer to do is drive home that hopelessness, because it is really, when I come to the end of myself, when I come to my abilities, my good ideas, my little plans and desires, and I can see how hopeless I am, that's when I'm willing to accept the hope that's on offer. So hammering home the hopelessness. So say that you believe he is a gravely ill person with this qualification, being perhaps fatally ill. Does he want to get well? You ask because many alcoholics being warped and drugged don't want to quit. But does he? Will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? And you know what's really cool about this question is we see it throughout the book. I won't take us all the way there because I've already done this a number of times, but we see that on page 42. And asking, are you done? Are you willing to go to any lengths? We see it in the chapter How It Works on page 58 when it's asking, hey, do you want what we have, but are you willing to go to any lengths to get it? What do we have? Permanent, contented sobriety. It asks us to ask the prospective newcomer, this on page 90 in the chapter Working with Others, and on page 112. It asks that we perhaps ask our loved ones, do they want to get well? Do they want to get sober? Not that you do it for anyone else, but do you want to? So we see this again. Will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? And I can ask myself that question. Am I willing to go to any lengths? If he says yes, does he really mean it? Or down inside, does he think he is fooling you? That after arrest and treatment, he will be able to get away with a few drinks now and then? We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points. Oh, that ties into last week when we were talking about Dr. Bob. I made the joke this time. That one's on me. Thoroughly probed on these points. Be satisfied he is not deceiving himself for you. Am I done? Am I willing to go to any lengths? Now, keep in mind, me wanting to stay sober forever has no effect on my ability to stay sober forever if I do not follow that up with action. So it says, whether you mention this book is a matter for your discretion. If he temporizes, so kind of gets sobered up, and still thinks he can ever drink again, even beer, he might as well be discharged after the next bender, which, if an alcoholic, he is almost certain to have. Again, what we're pointing to is that mental obsession. And really some of that step one, oh, welcome guys. That step one stuff, that idea that step one is not, I'm never going to drink again, or step one is not that I'm never going to relapse, but step one is that I will relapse. I will, if my illness is untreated. That's what step one is. And so, I mean, that's the course of action. If I have this illness, I will, whether I want to or not. And so it's likely if somebody's not open to it, that's okay. They don't have to be open, but they likely will drink again if they have this illness. He should understand that emphatically. So with emphasis, emphasizing, if you drink again, you are fired. So this is a solid hard line boundary, no mincing words, no, I'll take you back. If you drink again, you're done. Especially if you show up drunk again, you're done, Either you're dealing with a man who can and will get well, or you are not. If not, why waste time with him? This may seem severe, but it is usually the best course. And we saw these directions similarly on page 96, right? When it talks about, and we're of course made the joke about 9669. Is this the directions on like relationships, But on page 96, it talks about very, very first paragraph. It says, do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced that he cannot recover by himself. And we're going to see that that's what we're trying to do in the chapter 2 employers. If somebody's not convinced that they have this illness, not convinced that they need this course of action, I'm not going to convince them. That's not my job. That's alcoholism's job. So it says to spend too much time on any one situation is to deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. And so we'll bounce right back to 142. Part of why I love bouncing around in the later chapters is because a lot of times we think the later chapters, just for those that are new to this study, they don't have this, they have different information, or they have information that doesn't apply to me, or they don't have directions. But when I tie it into we've already covered and we've already seen in this book, we see these themes that were laid down in as early as the preface and the forwards continue on into these later and often forgotten chapters. And there's so much value in them that if I don't study, that I miss. So I'll get off my little excited about 2 employers rant. Focusing up. So It's bottom paragraph 142. After satisfying yourself that your man wants to recover and that he will go to any extreme to do so, you may suggest a definite course of action. What is that definite course of action? Right? And even sometimes, yeah, it's these 12 steps taken out of this book. That is the definite course of action that we can take. Man, and before I was properly armed with facts about myself, before I had the experience going through this book and taking these actions, people would come into the rooms and I don't know about you guys, but I want them to stay sober. I want, you know, there's sometimes people that'll be like, if I could give you the miracle, I wouldn't, I would. Because they're like, you missed the journey. Nope, my codependent butt would. I absolutely would. You're gonna die. I would, you know? But it's that idea that like I before I had this experience, people would come and I didn't know what they needed to do. And I'm sure like so many, I would say, keep coming back and maybe the miracle will happen. But that's not what we have. We have a definite course of action, clear-cut directions. To be fair, they don't look appealing when I haven't taken them. A definite course of action that any human being can take. And if I take these actions, I can and I will get well. And that's just something I want to point out. If we're, you know, if anyone here today is new, if anyone here is in and out, if anyone here is struggling, and it's like, man, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to drink again. I don't want to pick up again. I'm in pain. I'm in suffering. What do I do? Let us help you. We have a clear-cut set of directions. So it says, for most alcoholics who are drinking or just getting over a spree, a certain amount of physical treatment is desirable, even imperative. And so what we're talking about here is oftentimes detox at minimum, you know, especially if we're coming detoxing off alcohol, it can be quite dangerous. And it talks about that in the doctor's opinion. Twice in the doctor's opinion, it talks about how it's better if a man's brain be cleared before he is approached. Or, you know, it talks, so what we're talking about is, yeah, to be physically detoxed. And it says the matter of physical treatment should, of course, be referred to your own doctor. Whatever the method, its object. So the purpose of detox or the purpose of treatment, oh, yeah, Rob's got it. I always say imperative is of the utmost importance. But another way to look at imperative is required, necessary, and then the chat left and the mouse is over here. But you can read it in the chat. Oh, a slight change to my circumstances, and I'm like, I'm lost. What do we do? Where is it? It's over there. It's helpless, but that's okay. I've got access to the power. Anyway, focus page. All right. So whatever the method, its object is to thoroughly clear the mind and body of the effects of alcohol, that detox process. In competent hands, this seldom takes long, nor is it very expensive. Your man will fare better if he is placed in such physical condition that he can think straight and no longer craves liquor. And it's important to know when we talk about the craving in this book, when we point to craving, what we're talking about is the physical allergy, right? That when I'm sober, I'm fully detoxed, I'm sober, and I get a thought that tells me I can drink, that is the mental obsession. It's once I start to drink, that's what the craving is. So that's the physical allergy. If you propose such a procedure to them, it may be necessary to advance the cost of treatment, but we believe it should be made plain that any expense will be later deducted from his pay. It is better for him to feel fully responsible. Do you remember when we were reading that? We were reading that, you're like, absolutely not.
Yeah, $900 a day.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's one of those things that like, what's most helpful, right? In the family afterward, it talks about how you know, we ought not put the alcoholic in cotton wool and place him on a pedestal. Successful readjustment means the opposite, that I be responsible for myself and my treatment, my recovery, right? So it says, I'm just teasing, you're doing fine. If your man accepts your offer, it should be pointed out that physical treatment is but a small part of the picture. If I have this illness, rehab isn't going to be enough. If I have this illness, sober living isn't going to be enough. If I have this illness, going to the gym, getting into a relationship, getting out of a relationship, doing the geographic, moving from Calgary out this way, that none of that is going to be enough. None of it's enough. Nothing less than a spiritual experience. And I will drink again. Right? So treatment, and there's nothing wrong with those things. Nothing wrong with the geographic, nothing wrong with, getting a fresh start, nothing wrong with going to rehab, nothing wrong with sober living. That stuff can be really helpful and really advantageous, but it's not a solution. So though you are providing him with the best possible medical attention, he should understand that he must undergo a change of heart. And I always get ahead of myself. That's what we're talking about, a spiritual awakening. And if there's anyone here that like the word God or higher power kind of makes you feel uncomfortable, what's interesting in two employers, we don't see the word God. It's the only chapter where God's not really mentioned. It's sneaky. But that change of heart, and then in the next sentence that comes, those are going to be descriptions of a spiritual awakening. So to get over drinking will require transformation of thought and attitude. That's another beautiful description of what a spiritual awakening is. And my thoughts and my attitudes utterly transformed. And it looks very similar to what I was talking about, and there is a solution on page 27. I won't take us there. All right, so we all had to place recovery above everything. For without recovery, we would have lost both home and business. If we've ever heard, I have to put recovery first, right? Because anything that I put in front of my recovery, that's what I'm going to lose, right? That's what I'm going to lose when I inevitably drink again, right? Yes, transformation, it's change in thought and attitude. Absolutely. Yeah. And that idea too, it's just been my experience is when I put recovery first, when I put God first, when I put these 12 steps first, this first, man, everything in my life, there's that saying, everything in my life is first class. Like when I do that, everything works out better than I could have imagined. Now, when I think I got to try to fix and manage, and let me put this first, it's real important, so let me get my hands in it. It doesn't work out that well, at least for me. So it says, can you have every confidence in his ability to recover? Well, on the subject of confidence, can you adopt the attitude that so far as you are concerned, that this will be a strictly personal matter? That his alcoholic derelictions and a treatment about to be undertaken will never be discussed without his consent. I love derelictions, faults. Hold on, let me get the mouse. It's faults, failures, shortcomings, delinquencies. And I look at derelictions as to that idea that like sort of outside the normal. I'm a little bit of a derelict. I'm a little run down, little rode hard, put away wet. I don't know why I used that. I did not mean that. Just came out of my mouth. Yeah. Melissa's over there. That doesn't make that sentence. We won't focus. We're going to focus on the book. We're not going to look too hard at what I meant in that statement. Anywho, what's funny is that paragraph. I love how it starts, where it's like every confidence in its ability to recover. Hey, speaking of confidence, and then he goes off on a tangent. And I feel like Hank and I have sort of a very similar communication style, which is all over the place, All right. But what that paragraph is talking about is that idea of confidentiality. Because especially at that time, alcoholism carried quite the stigma. And I know a lot of us, myself included, when we come in, we get worried, what do people think about us? And will people know? And so it's going to give some examples. And HR wasn't really a thing back then in the 1930s. So they didn't have those, HR policies. So it might be well to have a long chat with him on this, on his return. To return to the subject matter of this book, it contains full suggestions, so full directions by which the employee may solve his problem. Solve, recovered, not cured, I can't ever drink again, but solve, right? That's what's on offer. A deep and powerful solution. To you, some of the ideas which it contain are novel. Some of it might seem, and keep in mind, when I, came to this book, came to these steps for the first time, I wasn't excited about them. I thought they might be a good idea, but like maybe for you guys, a little drastic, Yeah, we're recovered, not cured, absolutely. And so, so it's saying perhaps you are not quite in sympathy with the approach we suggest. Maybe you think this is a silly idea. Maybe you don't like the idea of a higher power. Maybe you've got these preconceived notions and ideas. By no means do we offer it as the last word on the subject. But so far as we are concerned, it has worked with us. And that's a real statement of humility. We're not telling you what you have to do. We're not telling you what you must do. But this is an answer that we have found, a real answer. After all, are you not looking for results rather than methods? And I mean, we kind of see throughout the book that the results of this work speak for themselves. And that's the thing is, I might have thought, this was crazy, or this was a weird idea, or I didn't think prayer could help meditation. That sounds like that doesn't apply to me. Amends, no thank you. But I saw that it worked in others. I saw people whose light came on. I saw the change, and then I saw the change that had happened, in me. Hold on, let me have a thing. Oh yeah. Ooh, sorry, I'm not going to be able to read all of that. Oh yeah. So we are not cured of alcoholism. Recovered but not cured. That presents a conflict to some alcoholics. If we were cured, we'd be able to drink responsibly. Absolutely. No, we are not cured. The allergic reaction to alcohol will remain with us for a lifetime, but we have been restored to sanity. Absolutely. That was, hold on. That was the problem. The main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. Page 23. It's great you got the page numbers. We are now sane where alcohol is concerned. Consequently, we have recovered. Absolutely. And that's kind of the thing is Melissa's over there making dinner. Now, if she put a bunch of onions or peppers, please don't. She put a bunch of onions or peppers in it. So I'm allergic. I'm allergic to onions. I'm allergic to peppers. I'm not really fun. I can't do a lot of spice. I'm sure that surprises nobody with the sunburn that I've got. Absolutely not. But I would say, no, thank you. I can't eat that, right? So I don't have a problem. I just don't eat it. But that's what we're talking about. The recovered means the mental obsession has been relieved. And upon therapy for the alcoholic himself, we surely have no monopoly, page XXI. Yet it is our great hope that all those who have yet found no answer may find one in the pages of this book. Absolutely. It's real good you put the where we were at, because sometimes I think I need them for me, Rob. All right. So whether your employee likes it or not, you will learn the grim truth of alcoholism. That hopelessness, the fatality of it. That won't hurt him a bit, even though he does not go for this remedy. We suggest you draw the book to the attention of the doctor who is to attend to your patient during treatment. If this book is read, the moment the patient is able, while acutely depressed, realization of his condition may come to him. And it was talking about that in working with others. It was talking about that in Two Wives. That idea that I'm going to be more open to taking a course of action that seems pretty drastic when I'm depressed, when I'm having that, what I call them is those windows of willingness. When alcoholism, drunk or sober, has just beaten me down, when I've just come to the end of myself and I'm hopeless and I'm done. Those come into the morning after, and it's like, I really mean I never want to do this again. And in that little window of willingness, I'm willing to take action that I wasn't willing to take before. Now, here's what I experience is if I take action when I'm open to it, that window will stay open. But if I don't, it inevitably closes. And so I've got to act within that window. And the more hopeless I am, the better. And hopeless doesn't need to be an external hopelessness. I can be hopeless on the inside. I can be pretty badly mangled on the inside. It doesn't have to have anything to do with my external condition. We hope the doctor will tell the patient the truth about his condition, whatever that happens to be. When the man is presented with this volume, it is best that no one tell him he must abide by its suggestions. The man must decide for himself. That was all through the chapter 2 wives. That idea of, I can't force anyone to do this. I can't push anyone to do this. And believe me, my could have been, but has tried. And the results were nil. But people who are open to it, when I lay down the simple kit of spiritual tools, a lot higher than nil, a lot higher. It works, you know? You're betting, of course, that your changed attitude plus the contents of this book will turn the trick. In some cases it will, and in others it may not. But we think that if you persevere, the percentage of successes will gratify you. And that's kind of, do I look at my own sponsoring? You know, that idea is like, hey, am I working with others? Are they staying sober? Are they working with others? And if I'm not, like, it's not be in shame or beat myself up. It's just something to look at. Am I being efficient and effective in working with others? And that's just something I like to look at for me, because it's so important for me to work with others, like so important. You know, not only does my life depend on it, but man, that is where value and meaning and purpose has been given me. So it says, as our work spreads and our numbers increase, we hope your employees may be put into personal contact with some of us. Meanwhile, we are sure a great deal can be accomplished by the use of this book alone. So again, this book was meant to go out into the world and precisely carry this message. And I might be a lone sober alcoholic in the middle of nowhere and somehow get a copy of this book. No sponsor, no home group, no, you know, and it's good to have those things. I'm not saying fire your sponsor and, you know, ditch your home group. What I'm saying is that this book contains the directions on how to get well. And if I follow them, I will. And if I don't, in my experience, I will drink again. So it says, on your employer's return, have a talk with him. Ask him if he thinks he is the answer, if he feels free to discuss his problems with you, if he knows you understand and will not be upset to anything he wishes to say, you'll probably be off to a fast start. And what we're doing with that little paragraph and in this next paragraph is kind of preparing the employee for the next step amends process. That's what we're doing. We're prepping for amends. Woo! So it says, in this connection, can you remain undisturbed if the man proceeds to tell you shocking things? He may, for example, reveal that he has padded his expense account, or that he has planned to take your best customers away from you. In fact, he may say almost anything if he has accepted our solution, which, as you know, demands rigorous honesty. Can you charge this off as you would a bad account and start fresh with him? If he owes you money, you may wish to make terms. Oh man, we gotta pay the money back. Yeah. If he speaks of his home situation, you can undoubtedly make helpful suggestions. Can he talk frankly with you, so long as he does not bear business tales or criticize his associates? That warning not to gossip or enable that gossiping, that judgment, that criticism. With this kind of employee, such an attitude will command undying loyalty. And now this is an important line. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Now, we're not meant to take that sentence and be like, excuse me, those are my enemies. You cannot make me frustrated or fearful. Excuse me, no. Just like we wouldn't in Two Wives, right? That's not how we're using that. That means that is the stuff that I need to watch for, the greatest enemies. And one of the things that I like, resentment makes sense, jealousy makes sense, envy makes sense, fear, of course, we've got columns for that. Frustration. I don't know about you, but there's so many times I've done this. I've worked with sponsees where it's like, no, it's not a resentment. I don't need to do a 10-step on it. I don't need to do columns. No. It's simply, I'm just frustrated, right? Frustrated. That word that I might try to use to minimize, to soften, and perhaps avoid putting some pen to paper on some work. That is one of my greatest enemies. And why? Because I don't have a good gauge. A solitary self-appraisal is insufficient. Anyone ever tried to avoid looking at a resentment, and you finally look at it and you see that it affected everything in the third column, and you finally get free of it, and that, oh man, that was bigger than I thought. I don't got a good gauge on it. Or that little resentment it's just a little frustration, but I'm thinking about it all day, every day, just a little one that's taking up all the space in my head, right? So that for me is always a reminder that I've got to continue. I've got to continue to take inventory, and I've got to continue to not minimize, because these things build up. And there's the only thing that comes from having to look at the stuff is freedom. That's the only thing. And I want that. So it says, wherever men are gathered together in business, there will be rivalries. And arising out of these, that certain amount of office politics. Sometimes we alcoholics have an idea that people are trying to pull us down. Often. So often, this is not so at all. That's been my experience. You know how you think it's like, man, they're getting, but I need inventory to see that, right? Often this is not so at all, but sometimes our drinking will be used politically. So again, I don't always have a good gauge. It says one instance comes to mind in which a malicious individual was always making friendly little jokes about an alcoholic's drinking and exploits. In this way, he was slyly carrying tales. In another case, an alcoholic was sent to a hospital for treatment. Only a few knew of it at first. Within a short time, it was billboarded throughout the entire company. Naturally, this sort of thing decreased the man's chance of recovery. The employer can many times protect the victim from this kind of talk. The employer cannot play favorites, but he can always defend a man from needless provocation and unfair criticism. Awesome, thank you. As a class, alcoholics are energetic people. Yeah, woo! They work hard and play hard. Yeah, God. I don't know. This is a chapter we get a lot of compliments. Yeah, we do. We're hard workers. Yeah. Your man should be on the mettle to make good. So be determined to make things right. Being somewhat weakened and faced with physical and mental readjustment to a life which knows no alcohol, he may overdo. You may have to curb his desire to work 16 hours a day. And again, that kind of ties into what we're reading in The Family Afterward, where we have that spiritual experience and we tend to go one of two directions, diving headlong into business, working 16 hours a day, or diving into spirituality. And so it's saying curb his desire. So even in two employers, it's not saying that that's a good way to go. Diving into spirituality, if I got to pick, that's the one. It says you may need to encourage him to play once in a while. He may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics, and something of this sort may come up during business hours. A reasonable amount of latitude will be helpful. This work is necessary to maintain his sobriety. So it's trying to prepare the employee or the employer. We will, it is vital that I work with others. That is of the utmost importance. And if I want my employee to stay sober, let them do a couple 12-step calls on business hours, not the end of the world. That's what it's saying. After your man has gone along without drinking for a few months, you may be able to make use of his services with other employees who are giving you the alcoholic runaround, provided, of course, they're willing to have a third party in the picture. And what I really want to emphasize is a few months. Again, it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to demonstrate a change. It does not take long to have a spiritual awakening. And Absolutely. Oh, give me 1 second. Let me click on the doohickey. Okay, 1 sec. Yeah, it's that, I know, I'll read your thing. Lost my train of thought. I worked in a local government and was permitted to attend lunchtime meetings and make up my time before and after normal office hours. And that was in an early recovery. Absolutely. And that sort of leeway can kind of be helpful because, I mean, what ensures my sobriety more than anything else? Intensive work with others, intensive work with others. So again, spiritual awakening, and it does not take long to have that. And even in two employers, we're seeing the importance of working with others, 12-step work. And again, that consent, that idea of we can utilize, if someone who has recovered, we can utilize them, provided that other person is open to, consent, HR, confidentiality, that sort of stuff that wasn't really talked about then. So an alcoholic who has recovered, there's that word again, recovered, not cured, but recovered, but holds a relatively unimportant job, can talk to a man with a better position, being on a radically different basis of life. And I always want to point out, oh, sweet. I'll get to the chat in just a second. I always want to point out basis of life, way of life. This is not a set it and forget it deal, right? Treatment, but a small part. I'm not done. I need to continue to live this way of life. It says, being on radically different basis of life, he will never take advantage of the situation. And I'm going to the chat. So this is the 17th time recovered is used. Sounds like we get to be recovered. And in regards to the lunchtime meetings, I was transparent with my employers and told them of my circumstances. That was why they were helpful. I started to be honest. And that actually, oh, I'm so glad I read it in this way, because that is a natural transition to the next paragraph, which is all about honesty. So it says, your alcoholic man your man may be trusted. And that's a lot of faith that Hank put in someone like me. He's never met, never would meet, like died before I was born. But that faith that he put in people like us, those who have recovered may be trusted. Long experience with alcoholic excuses naturally arouse suspicion. When his wife next calls saying he's sick, you might jump to the conclusion that he is drunk. If he is and still trying to recover, he will tell you about it, even if it means the loss of his job. And when we were in the chapter 2 Wives, I spoke about how there's only a few places, and this is the second place, where directions are given with regard to a relapse after we've come into contact with AA or 12 steps. This is the second place. And so this is a direction. If I have relapsed, what do I want to do? I want to tell no one. I want to keep it to myself. I want to hide it. I want to be in shame. I hope it'll blow over. But it's giving me the precise, clear-cut direction. Be honest about it. That's what I need to do. And the other direction that we saw before was redouble our efforts. That was on page 120. So those are little like tie-ins, little like things. So it says, for he knows he must be honest if he would live at all. That honesty. He will appreciate knowing you are not bothering your head about him. That you are not suspicious, nor are you trying to run his life so he will be shielded from temptation to drink. Tells us not to do that in page 100, right? Page 100, to try to shield a man from temptation. It just wound up to a bigger failure than ever. And it says, if he is conscientiously following the program of recovery, the 12 steps, he can go anywhere your business may call him. And we saw that at page 101, where we can go anywhere, keeping on the firing line of life with the motives of helping others, working with others. Now, it does say, as long as I've got a good reason and I'm spiritually fit, and to ask myself each time, in case he does stumble, even once, you'll have to decide whether to let him go. If you are sure he doesn't mean business, there is no doubt you should discharge him. If, on the contrary, you are sure he's doing his utmost, You may wish to give him another chance, but you should feel under no obligation to keep him on, for your obligation to him has been well discharged already. So if we've offered this way of life and said, hey, if you drink again, I gotta let you go, or you know, show up drunk at work, I gotta let you go, it's fair to hold that. But if we've seen the change, we've seen they're trying, it's offering a little grace. There is another thing you might wish to do. If your organization is a large one, your junior executives might be provided with this book. You might let them know you have no quarrel, no fight, no argument, no battle with the alcoholics of your organization. These juniors are often in a difficult position. Men under them are frequently their friends. So for one reason or another, they cover these men, hoping matters will take a turn for the better. They often jeopardize their own positions by trying to help serious drinkers who should have been fired long ago, or else given an opportunity to get well. After reading this book, a junior executive can go to such men and say approximately this. And I've always found this to be just a really good example. Forgive the term of a boundary. I know, you know, that's not a term used in the big book, but that idea of like honest, direct communication. I don't know about you, but I struggled with honest, direct communication. So it says, look here, Ed. I want you to know whenever I set a boundary with someone, that's what I start with. I'm like, look here, Ed. I'm just kidding. I don't do that. Look here, Ed. Do you want to stop drinking or not? You put me on the spot every time you get drunk. It isn't fair to me or the firm. So your actions affect me. Or a better way to say it is I am affected by those actions. I have been learning something about alcoholism. If you are an alcoholic, you are a mighty sick man. You act like one. The firm wants to help you get over it. And if you are interested, there is a way out. If you take it, your past will be forgotten. And the fact that you went away for treatment will not be mentioned. But if you cannot or will not stop drinking, I think you ought to resign. Your junior executive may not agree with the contents of our book. Again, you don't have to like it. Heck, I don't have to like the steps to do them. He need not, and often should not, show it to his alcoholic prospect. But at least he will understand the problem and will no longer be misled by ordinary promises, because we understand the hopelessness of alcoholism. So when the alcoholic is saying, no, I'm not going to do it this time, I'm going to go out for 3 drinks, or no, I'm going to stay sober, I'm just going to really focus on going to the gym, not wrong with the gym, but I'm going to focus on work or whatever. We know, because we understand the mental obsession, right? He will be able to take a position with such a man which is eminently fair and square. And he will have no further reason for covering up an alcoholic employee. It boils right down to this. And this is a summary of really what we're saying up until this point. No man should be fired just because he's an alcoholic. If he wants to stop, he should be afforded a real chance. If he cannot or does not want to stop, he should be discharged. The exceptions are few. And that's essentially what it's been saying this whole time in this chapter. We think this method of approach will accomplish several things. 1, it will permit the rehabilitation of good men. 2, at the same time, you'll feel no reluctance to rid yourself of those who cannot or will not stop. Alcoholism may be causing your organization considerable damage in its waste of time, men, and reputation. We hope our suggestions will help you plug up this sometimes serious leak. We think we are sensible when we urge you to stop this waste and give your worthwhile man a chance. And so again, that paragraph is sort of that appealing to the, cold-hearted businessman who's only in this thing to save money and, make money and do all that. But I love that line, worthwhile man a chance, because the non-alcoholic employer who's that cold-hearted businessman might not know how worthwhile people like us are, but we do, The other day, an approach was made to the vice president of a large industrial concern. He remarked, "I'm mighty glad that you fellows got over your drinking, but the policy of this company is not to interfere with the habits of our employees. If a man drinks so much that his job suffers, we fire him. I don't see how you can be of any help to us. For as you can see, we don't have any alcoholic problem. And I love this because this is a sign of Hank's poor communication skills. I know I shouldn't criticize, but he's, Hank Parkhurst, he's the guy that wrote this chapter. And he was like the salesman, he's selling and yeah, this is a second example of him like really trying to communicate to some of these guys in big business about how we could be helpful to them. And then 2 for 2, he strikes out. Nope. We'll see some success in the next chapter of Vision for You, so don't worry about that. So it says this same company spends millions for research every year. Their cost of production is figured to a fine decimal point. They have recreational facilities. There's company insurance. There is a real interest, both humanitarian and business, in the well-being of the employees. But alcoholism, well, they just don't believe they have it. Perhaps this is a typical attitude. We who have collectively seen a great deal of business life, at least from the alcoholic angle, had to smile at this gentleman's sincere opinion. He might be shocked if he knew how much alcoholism is costing his organization a year. That company may harbor many actual or potential alcoholics. And just kind of a fun fact about the potential alcoholic is Hank wanted to have a whole chapter dedicated to the potential alcoholic. And when I was reading this book, I was like, oh, potential alcoholic, that's me. It's not that bad. I've just got like baby alcoholism, a little bit. But I will say that's the only time in my life I'm like, I'm potential. All right. So we believe that managers of large enterprises often have little idea how prevalent this problem is. Even if you feel your organization has no alcoholic problem, it may pay to take another look down the line. You may make some interesting discoveries. Of course, this chapter refers to alcoholics, sick people, deranged men. What our friend, the vice president, had in his mind was the habitual or whoopee drinker. Isn't it nice to be recovered? Yeah, whoopee. It's loud and festive occasion, merriment, celebration, whoopee. But earlier it says we can go to whoopee parties if I'm recovered. We can go anywhere. It's freedom. We can whoopee at the whoopee party. All right, focus. So as to that, his policy is undoubtedly sound, but he did not distinguish between such people and the alcoholic. It is not expected that an alcoholic employee will not receive, or it is not expected that an alcoholic employee will receive a disproportionate amount of time and attention. He should not be made the favorite. Oh, I don't want to be the favorite, right? A little bit. And it says the kind of man who recovers will not want this sort of thing. Uh-oh. I mean, yeah, I don't want to be the favorite. I don't want to be special. That's fine. I'm good. And so it says he will not impose. Far from it. He will work like the devil and thank you to his dying day. Today, I own a little company. The little company is talking about is a company called Honor Dealers. Yeah. Oh, do you have more on it? Oh, hold on. I'm clicking. Yeah, Honor Dealers. And it was an auto supply cooperative buying group. Yeah, it was, the car stuff. So Hank owned 51% of the business with Bill, and his investment group owing 49. And Bill was listed as the secretary and treasurer. And Jim Burwell, he wrote The Vicious Cycle on page 129. So he's going to be the 2 employees. So it says there are 2 alcoholic employees, Bill and Jim, those guys. Yeah. And, it's funny because as he's writing the chapter, 2 employers, Honor Dealers is not doing well, guys. It's kind of on the rocks. It's going down. They're getting a smaller office because it's not lasting. It's not staying solvent. I think that's the word. So, and it says, who produce as much as 5 normal salesmen. But why not? And I love, this is a beautiful, beautiful line to end on. They have a new attitude. And they have been saved from a living death. I've enjoyed every moment spent getting them straightened out. That new attitude, that spiritual awakening, that being saved, pulled out from that you know, that riverbed by that flimsy reed that turns into the loving and powerful hand of God. And that enjoying every moment spent straight, getting them straightened out. That's at least been my experience working with others. So we'll pick up next week in A Vision for You. And I mean, it's always one of my favorite. I say that with every chapter. I'm like, it's one of my favorite chapters, but it's so good and so much history. So I'll stop the recording.